In the unforgiving deserts of Arizona, one act of kindness tied a lonely rancher to an entire Apache family, changing his destiny in ways he never expected. If you love powerful Western stories of honor and unexpected love, make sure to like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Let's get started. Daniel Hayes had spent most of his life under the wide, open skies of Arizona, where silence carried farther than voices and kindness traveled slower than dust. That evening, as the sun melted into red and gold, he spotted something unusual near the trail. A figure slumped on the ground. His horse, Mesa, halted as if sensing danger, but Daniel slid down without hesitation. The woman was older, her skin weathered like canyon stone, her breath faint. She clutched a small pouch of herbs as though it held her last strength. Without a word, Daniel lifted her gently and placed her on his saddle. The ride back to his ranch was slow, careful. The woman's head rested against his arm, her breath shallow but steady. Daniel kept glancing down, making sure she was still alive. He didn't know who she was or what trouble she had run from, but that didn't matter. Out on the frontier, a man didn't walk away from anyone in need. When he reached the barn, he carried her inside, the horses watching curiously as he hurried to prepare water. The scent of hay and evening wind filled the quiet space. After settling her comfortably on a blanket, Daniel fetched warm water and a clean cloth. He pressed it gently to her forehead, and her eyes fluttered open, dark, sharp, and filled with something ancient. She didn't speak at first, but he saw gratitude in the way she exhaled. When he handed her a cup of water, she drank slowly, as though every sip reminded her body that it still had life left. Her hands trembled, yet she nodded in quiet thanks before resting again. When she was strong enough to sit upright, Daniel offered her some bread and beans from the pot he had simmering on the stove. She ate quietly, studying the room, studying him. After a long moment, she finally spoke one word through a thick accent, Tala. Daniel nodded, repeating her name to make sure he understood. Her gaze softened at his effort. She pointed to herself, then made a small circle over her heart, a gesture of sincerity or respect. He wasn't sure. Daniel didn't speak much himself, and he imagined that suited her fine. He prepared a small bed near the fire, draping an old quilt across her shoulders. The night outside grew colder, winds sweeping along the plains like restless spirits. Inside, the room held a soft glow from the fire, and a feeling Daniel hadn't felt in years. Company. Tala breathed easier as warmth wrapped around her like a protective arm. She looked at Daniel with quiet trust before sleep overtook her. Throughout the night, Daniel woke several times to check on her. Each time, Tala slept peacefully, the shadows of the fire dancing gently over her face. He wondered what had driven her so far from her people. Apache territory lay miles north, and no one traveled this land alone without reason. But he didn't ask. Her wounds weren't just physical, he could sense that much. When dawn crept through the shutters, he brewed coffee and stepped outside to let the horses graze, thinking she might need more rest. When he returned, he found Tala standing near the door, wrapped in his quilt, her posture stiff but full of dignity. She pointed to her leg, it no longer shook beneath her. Daniel tried to insist she stay another night, but she lifted a firm hand. She touched her chest, then pointed toward the distant mesas. She had people waiting, and they needed her. Her English was limited, but her meaning was clear. She could not remain where danger might follow. Daniel respected that and prepared a small satchel with food and water for her journey. Before stepping outside, Tala paused and placed her hand gently on Daniel's arm. Her touch was surprisingly warm, steady. She looked directly into his eyes, her expression carrying a weight of stories she did not speak. "You, good man," she murmured. Then, with a slow inhale, she added, "My people, remember." Daniel nodded awkwardly, unused to such sincerity. Her words felt like a promise, one he didn't fully understand but sensed was important. She had shown him a glimpse of another world, one shaped by honor and memory rather than coins or laws. Daniel walked her to the edge of his property, where the horizon stretched endlessly. Tala turned once more, studying him as though memorizing his face. The wind tugged at her hair, carrying the scent of juniper and earth. "Honor," she said softly, tapping her heart. "You have." Daniel felt a strange warmth rise in his chest. He wasn't used to praise, especially from someone who had lived through hardships he could only imagine. He watched as she walked away, slow at first, then with steady determination, till she disappeared behind the ridge. After she was gone, Daniel stood alone in the quiet morning, the sun rising behind him. He wondered if he would ever see her again, or if this moment would simply fade like so many others in his solitary life. Yet something inside him felt different, lighter, as if Tala had left behind a thread connecting their two worlds. He returned to his small cabin, unaware that his act of kindness had already taken root far beyond his ranch. Apache eyes had seen the stranger who carried one of their own, and word would spread faster than the wind. Though Daniel didn't know it, fate had already begun weaving his name into stories whispered around campfires, of a white man who showed respect when others offered cruelty, who lifted an elder instead of raising a gun. In a land divided by fear and history, small actions echoed loudly, and somewhere beyond the ridges, Tala walked with renewed strength, carrying more than his supplies. She carried his honor back to her people, and for Daniel Hayes, life on the frontier would never be the same again. Daniel Hayes was fixing a broken fence post when he saw movement on the ridge. At first he thought it was just wild horses, but when the shapes drew closer, his breath caught. Tala rode at the front, straight-backed and steady, no longer weakened by exhaustion. But it was the second rider who made Daniel freeze. A young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, rode beside her with confidence that belonged only to someone raised in the open desert. Her long dark braids flowed behind her, and her expression carried the calm intensity of a warrior who feared nothing, not even him. Tala dismounted first, her feet steady on the ground. Daniel walked toward them cautiously, wiping dust from his hands. Before he could speak, Tala gestured to the young woman. "This is my daughter, Asha." Her voice carried authority. "I heard you want a wife." Daniel stumbled backward, choking on his own breath. "Ma'am, no, I never said that." Tala simply raised a hand, silencing his protest. "You saved me when you had no reason to. A man who honors life deserves a woman who honors him." Her words felt ancient, rooted in lands older than the border itself. Asha stepped forward with quiet grace. Her eyes, deep as desert shadows, studied him carefully. Daniel felt as though she could see through him past the dust on his clothes and the old loneliness he carried like a constant companion. "I choose my own path," she said softly, her English clearer than her mother's. "But I wanted to meet the man who helped my mother when others would not." Daniel swallowed hard. He wasn't used to being the center of such attention, especially from two women who carried entire histories in their footsteps. He invited them into his yard, offering water and a place to sit under the shade of a cottonwood tree. Tala accepted with a proud nod, but Asha remained standing for a moment, her gaze fixed on the horses in the corral. She seemed to be reading Daniel's life through the marks on the fence, the tools leaning against the barn, the worn saddle hanging by the door. Finally she turned back to him. "You live alone," she observed. Daniel nodded with a small shrug. "Been that way a while. Horses don't mind my company, at least." Tala sipped water slowly, then placed the cup aside. "In our tribe," she said, "when someone shows kindness to an elder, it is not forgotten. We repay honor with honor." Daniel felt a warmth spread through his chest, but also a deep unease. "I didn't help you for a reward," he said gently. "I helped because it was right." Tala's lips curved slightly. "Which is why the ancestors smile on you." Asha listened quietly, her eyes never leaving Daniel. For the first time, he felt seen, not as a lonely rancher, not as an outsider, but simply as a man. When the sun dipped lower, Asha approached him. "Walk with me," she said. Her voice wasn't commanding, but it carried a strength that made refusal impossible. Daniel nodded, and together they moved toward the open field where golden grass swayed like waves. They walked in silence at first, the wind whispering across the earth. Finally, Asha spoke. "My mother thinks highly of you. That is rare. She has seen much suffering, too much to trust easily." Daniel lowered his eyes, humbled. "Anyone would have helped her," he replied quietly. "No," Asha said firmly, "not anyone." As they walked, Asha asked him about his life, how long he had lived on the ranch, why he never married, what he hoped for in the years ahead. Daniel hesitated at first, but her calm presence made it easy to speak. He told her about his parents, lost early to fever, about the ranch he rebuilt with his own hands, about the dreams he had once held but slowly buried beneath work and solitude. Asha listened with a quiet intensity that made him feel the weight of his own words. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. "Our people have stories about men like you," she said. "Men who do good without asking for anything. Men who live with honor, even when no one is watching." Daniel looked at her, surprised. "I'm just surviving," he said. Asha shook her head gently. "No, you are living with purpose, even if you cannot see it." Something in Daniel's chest loosened, like a knot that had been pulled tight for far too long. He stopped walking, looking at the twilight sky. "I don't know what future you or your mother want for me," he said honestly. Asha stepped closer, the fading sunlight glowing against her features. "My mother thinks fate is offering a path," she said, "but I believe different." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What do you believe?" Asha inhaled deeply, her eyes warm but steady. "I believe choices are stronger than fate. I am not here to be given away. I am here because I wanted to meet the man who helped my mother, and to decide for myself who you truly are." Her words struck him with both relief and unexpected hope. They stood together as the sky turned from gold to purple. The ranch behind them, the vast desert ahead, it felt like standing between two worlds. Asha tilted her head, studying him with a soft smile. "You are a good man, Daniel Hayes," she said. "Whether we become part of each other's lives or not, I am glad I met you." Daniel felt heat rise to his face. I'd like to know you better," he admitted, his voice almost a whisper. Asha's smile deepened, warm and gentle. "Then we will walk more tomorrow." By the time they returned to the ranch, Tala watched them with quiet approval. Asha mounted her horse and looked back at Daniel. "We will return," she said. Daniel nodded, his heart lighter than it had been in years. As mother and daughter rode away, Daniel stood in the cool evening air, realizing something unexpected had begun. Not a promise, not an obligation, but a chance. A chance for connection. A chance for change. A chance for a future shaped by respect, kindness, and the possibility of something deeper. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel Hayes welcomed tomorrow with hope.